we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Tony Stevenson here, presenting Flabonga Monthrothacube for the first time solo. We'll get into where Dayle is in a little bit, but before we do that, I'm sure that you listeners will be familiar with me, as this is my, I don't know, 7th or 8th or 10th or something along those lines rodeo now. And this is actually James's third. But James, for those of us listening that don't know you and haven't experienced your amazing energy, please give us your potted history, a little about yourself.
Hi, everyone that doesn't know me, the fortunate people, depending on who you are. Tony, I've got a question before I do.
Okay,
how does it feel to have the power and responsibility of Flabonga Monthrothacube resting on your shoulders, sir? That's a big thing.
It is a big thing, right? Dale's over 100 episodes in, and he's very kindly invited me to join him to take the show forward. So I feel a great sense of responsibility to ensure that for this brief time I'm the custodian of everything good that he has done. And I feel a little bit like a kid with a fire hose, right? I could take it in any direction, but I won't. Good afternoon, Marcus. Nice to see you, my friend. Conscious that it's a big trust and power, so I will use it wisely.
I'm delighted to be here to be able to emotionally support you, Tony. So yeah, great stuff, mate. The question that you asked, so for those who don't know me, my name is James Sundin. Origin story, I'm a common lad from a council estate in Salford. That's got GCSEs and a BTEC National Diploma in Professional Cookery. So yes, I am great fun at barbecue. I've got a desire for something bigger and better in the world, where we want to bring positive change to as many children and young adults' lives around the globe as we possibly can. So regardless of what I do, regardless of who I do it for, and the immaculate success record that we've got at R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T, I just want to do good in the world. And that's the most important thing for me to share with your audience, Tony.
I love that, mate. We're going to start at a fact that I didn't know about you, which was that you are backgrounded in food. That is fascinating. How far did you take that? Were you chefing as a career? Yeah. Wow.
I was, yeah, absolutely. So you don't get to be 6'6" and 110 kilogram of northern rugby playing machine without food, mate. Point number one. So yeah, man after my own heart with yourself there, Tony. But so I did my GCSEs, and I was like, what the hell do I want to do with my life? Because do I go and do A levels? Do I go into university? There's so many people that are around me that I knew who'd done that, and they've gone and got degrees in something that they don't get a job in, and they don't use any of their degree for benefit. So I was like, actually, what's a good practical life skill? What can I do? How can I do it? Great, I'll go and train as a chef. So went to college, went through the academic route, got a job placement working as a commie chef, veg prep, all that kind of stuff. Worked as a chef for probably about 2 years, and then I realized, I was like, actually, I've got an outgoing personality. I like collaborating with people. I like social interactions, and being slightly above average height in a small cramped kitchen, doing 6 days a week split shifts, whilst all your mates are in the pub, is a bit shit. So I thought I'd change it, mate. And I got out of chefing and found my way, as many people do, falling into commission-only door-to-door sales. So yeah, very humble beginnings.
the obvious route, right? The obvious route.
Yeah. If it's good enough for Jamie Foxx, mate, that's where he started before he became an actor. If it's good enough for Jamie Foxx, it's good enough for me.
Mate, that is. So I love to cook, right? I have done since I was at uni, when I pitched up into the kitchen, and into our university kitchen was opposite my room, and realized that there was no food there ready for me to eat that I liked to eat. And then I sort of was like, right, well, I'm going to have to cook this myself, aren't I? After the sort of 7 months of making myself ill, enjoying university and eating terrible food. So I was like, Mum, how'd you cook that thing? Mum, how'd you cook that thing? Bought some Jamie Oliver cookbooks, got quite into it. and I like to cook, and I like to think I'm all right at it as well. And I've had a lot of people over the years say to me like, "Why don't you go and become a chef?" And I'm like, because like when I would be working is the time when everyone's having fun, and I don't love it that much. And I also think as well, like playing around with food at home's not the same thing as working in a kitchen, right? Where you're hot, split shifts, 6'6", chopping veg. There's only so many creative ways you can chop a carrot right before it becomes a job and the thing that you're doing, rather than some fun and something that you do in your spare time. So yeah, we have that in common, mate. I love to cook, and we're also exactly the same weight as well, which is you've got 5 extra inches on me as well, so I think it sits slightly better on you than it does on me, buddy. That's
okay. That's okay, mate. A lot of guys over exaggerate when it comes to inches anyway, so we'll just park that for the record.
Absolutely right. So you then ended up in door-to-door sales, right? You talk quite a lot about getting away with sales. Talk to us about that bit of your life and how that fits into what you do now.
Yeah, so sales is regarded as either a dirty thing to some people because they've perceived people selling in the wrong way. People that work in sales consider it hard. What's hard for me is when you are knocking on doors, walking around in the cold, wet and rain. You don't have a basic salary. You're on commission only as part of a pyramid scheme. And then you get
multi-level
in your face.
Multi-level management structure.
Sorry, yeah, the adult equivalent. People, it's quite funny when people say, "Oh, let's do a profit share," and I'm like, "Oh, you mean commission only? Okay, yeah, I'm willing to consider that, but what equity in your business am I taking?" And strangely enough, we don't end up doing any business, but it's great fun for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, like hard sales is door-to-door sales. He's walking around the cold, wet rain. I did that for probably 18 months to 2 years. Built a team of 43 people as part of my pyramid, which was great. Trained them personally. And then, yeah, I was like, I'm a bit knackered by this. I'm going to get a job in Civvy Street, so to speak, on the phones in a nice, comfortable, warm office, where all I've got is my tonality and the words that I use. And yeah, very humble beginnings, mate, but would and do recommend it for anyone starting a career in sales. If you can do that, you can make a living from it with the risk of being under commission only. You set yourself up for what is a better start in a career in sales by learning everything the hard way.
I think that sales is one of those incredibly valuable universal skills that sits across across international borders, across industries, across like any way that you could slice and dice like work and beyond work, right? And I always remember a wise man once said to me, because a wise man had said it to him, and the wise man that said it to me was Ian Phillips, who I used to work with at Xero, and he'd got it from a mentor of his, which was essentially that, like, to the response of like, well, I'm not very good at sales, was essentially that we're all in sales all of the time, right? As human beings, right? You have to sell yourself and your corner to some extent on a daily basis, right? You have to be able to get people on board with what you're about and what you're doing. Otherwise, life can feel small and challenging if you're not able to get people on your side in some way, shape or other, however that looks for you. But it's a thing that fascinates me. I've done it before. I've actually done door-to-door sales as well. I did alarms when I was at university on a commission-only basis. Wasn't great at it. Didn't do it for very long. Hadn't really kind of got up to speed before the contract ended, and I went back to uni and stuff. But have seen it firsthand, felt the pain. It's a challenge. If you can push yourself through that, then the rest of work probably feels like a nice place to be, looking back on that scenario of being in the rain, knowing you're not getting paid unless you sell something and things. But actually, like, such a valuable skill. Anyone who's like starting out in sales or wants to get better at it, like, what is that thing that people should start with, that should focus on?
Yeah, in order to be good at sales, so let's firstly redefine what sales actually is, because as made famous by Adam Clark and my dearest Jordan Vickery, of which I've got a figurine of right here, by the way. But what was made famous by them was pitch slap, right? If you think about what a pitch slap actually is, you are telling somebody exactly what you do, and in so much of a wording, you're basically saying, buy my shit, before you've understood, before you've built a relationship with them, before they even want to actually entertain a conversation with you. So the three things that are actually important in sales. Number one, positive energy. You could be picking up the phone to somebody. You could be emailing somebody, sending them a video message via LinkedIn, doing something on Instagram. Doesn't matter what it is. If you don't seem like somebody that's amenable and you want to talk to because they've got something positive about them, who wants to talk with you? If you're boring, you wouldn't. What's the point? So keep that positivity, keep that positive energy high. It's the most important thing. Second thing, be clear and concise in what you say. So many people mumble. They don't talk clearly. They don't articulate themselves. Be really, really clear in both your explanation of what you do and how you do it, but also be really, really clear in what you're getting from your prospective client. So listen to them and listen to them actively, but be super clear. Third point is add credibility. So who are you? What do you do? How have you fixed my problem? Or how have you benefited somebody else that's been in my situation previously? Understand and even share this with your clients. Break the fourth wall. Listen, you're selling this to them. You're biased. You're going to say you're great. Who's not biased? Somebody else that's one of your customers, or somebody you've worked with previously that's been through that exact process that your prospective client is going to be going through. Great. Have you documented that story? Have you shared that? Start doing that. Those three things. Great energy, clear and concise, and you're listening as well as talking to somebody and sharing. Don't pitch slap. Add credibility to the situation and how you fixed it in a non-biased situation coming from somebody else that's been through that process.
Particularly in our world, right? Accountants, bookkeepers, they talk, right? They talk. We go to, like, we've just come off the back of DAS, which was great, and Fab and alternative events, and we've got Caltex coming up next month. Right, there's plenty of opportunities for our profession to connect, and they do. And you know, the amount of times you've been in a situation where, you know, you as the salesperson will have a conversation with somebody and they go, oh, maybe, and then they'll pick up the phone to you a couple of weeks later. Spoke to my pal who uses your bit of software and they had nothing good to say about it, or vice versa, you know, and then maybe you never hear from them again. So that sort of peer-to-peer cross-referencing and storytelling, I think, is vital and particularly amplified in our world, right? Because there's a lot of noise that goes on in our world, a lot of people trying to sell to and through our profession. So getting people to tell your story positively, I think, is a hugely beneficial part of the world. I'm going to swerve now to ask a Dayle question, because Dayle asked this question. I'm going to ask it slightly in my own fashion. But I like to make sure that Dale's key questions get asked as well, because he can't be here. So he can't be here because he's double booked himself. And instead, he has given me the opportunity to present solo, which is great fun. Especially a good friend like James, who is, although Kaylee had come on to the comments and claimed that she's been on FM 3 times. I haven't been back through the list and had a look yet, but we believe that James is the first third time rejoiner from FM. So you hold a lofty, no pun intended, and singular position, we believe. But Kaylee may be able to provide some evidence that isn't the case, and if not, then I'm sure there's obviously another invitation for Kaylee to come on and complete the hat trick, right?
So first things first, that's an honour and a privilege. So thanks for that. Secondly, I shouldn't be, because Kaylee's far better than I am, so you should get her back on. Shame on you, Dayle, if you're listening or watching, depending on what you're doing whilst you're double booked. And the third point, I did actually, on that comment section, Tony, I did actually say, well, why don't you have Kaylee on at the same time? We can have your life, mate. But I see that didn't happen. So
it didn't happen. We've still got 45 minutes left, mate. You know, you never know. You never know. These things can happen.
Dial her in, make it happen.
I don't know if Dale's ever done that and added somebody in live that wasn't on the original roster, but This is the kind of freedom that I've been granted as Dale's not here. So who knows? We'll see. I'll check and see if there's been any conversation. I'm sure that if Kaylee wants to jump on for a bit, she'll pop something in the comments. The question that I was going to ask you, Dale asked this question: if you could only eat one meat for the rest of your life, what meat would it be? And I was going to frame it in a slightly different fashion. And how I was going to frame it was, you are approaching a barbecue, and you can feel like the smell of the smoke and that wonderful kind of experience of being around food that is cooked on fire, but you can only consume one meat for the rest of ever. And you open that barbecue lid and you see it just like it's there, and it is exactly what you want it to be underneath the lid of that barbecue. What is there? What can you see?
Brisket.
And how is it cooked? Yeah.
Did you just bite your hand at me, Tony?
I did a little bit, yeah. I did a little bit. That's a very good choice, my friend. Very good choice.
Was that in relation to the brisket comment, or was that just in general towards me, or?
It was a bit both, mate. It was a bit both, if I'm honest. Yeah, it's a bit both.
I just want to know where I stand, mate. But yeah, brisket. Come on, like if you're gonna go low and slow, you're gonna have some fun with it. You're gonna put some great quality homemade barbecue sauce. You're gonna put some demerara sugar on there. You're going to have fun with it, mate. Strangely enough, I'm going to a barbecue this weekend with a good friend, both inside and outside of the industry, Matt White from Iwaka. I'm going down to his place probably Friday. So yeah, that'll be nice. Lovely. I've told him earlier today that I'm moving in and I'm not moving out. So
is Matt a gorilla or is he a low and slow? We're going to be getting out. We're going to be cracking open on a Saturday morning, having had that brisket cooking all night. Do we know, or is it going to be a nice surprise when you arrive?
Matt is versatile in every way. Presumably, we're discussing barbecuing right now, but yeah, Matt's versatile. Nothing he can't do, mate.
Excellent, love it. For those of you that aren't so versed in the world of barbecue, brisket that's a connoisseur's choice, right? That is a chef's choice because it is notoriously difficult to get right. And many people have spent a lot of money ruining a brisket because it is notoriously difficult to get right. You have to cook it long and slow to get the right outcomes, and it can easily dry out. It can easily end up tough. So it is a bold shout, and one that someone with confidence in that area would call out as I do really quite want to go to Texas and go just crawl around Franklin's barbecue and all the other joints out there and experience it properly for the first time. I haven't done that, but I have been fortunate enough to eat some pretty good brisket. So I think that's an excellent choice. Are you a winter griller? Do you cook outside throughout the year, or are you a summer vibes kind of
guy? For those that it's not abundantly clear from, I'm from the north. Tony asked the distinction between winter and summer there. We have winter all year round, and there's a commonly used phrase which is t-shirts in the snow. So I am in Newcastle upon Tyne, originally from Salford. So I was in the north and then spent even more time north. There was a brief sabbatical for 4 years where I spent some time down in London and enjoyed what you people refer to as the sun. But now back in the north, as one of my clients described this client is Scottish, by the way, so they're allowed to say this. But they basically said, my job is to protect the English from the Scottish, which I found quite humorous because they are Scottish themselves. But yes, so Tony, it doesn't matter.
It matters
what time of year it is. Barbecue. It's always barbecue season, mate. We wear shorts in the winter. And there's no such thing as summer this far up north, mate. But thank you. Okay. Thank you
for humouring you. Yeah, we also talked not on this stream, but we talked about like where the north starts. So I'm from Northampton originally, which is strangely enough right bang in the middle of the country. For anyone that's not familiar with the exact location, the next village to where I grew up claims, alongside several others, to be like the central point of the country. It depends on sort of like how you measure it and stuff. But my wife is from Cornwall, so I am north and from the north to her, whereas to me, I'm from the middle of the Midlands, right? So that doesn't qualify me as either. So I sort of fall between, between both camps, really. So, yeah, maybe I can take the best of both worlds.
That's okay. I think we need to bridge the north-south divide.
I think so too.
I think we need to come together for the betterment of the entirety of the United Kingdom with barbecues. I think that sounds like a plan. Make it happen.
And also, like, sports as well, right? So we're going to talk about sports, mate. So we've sort of long had this idea of putting together a rugby game in the accounting world. Hopefully we'll get to hold it at Twickenham. That'd be lovely. I don't know if we talked about North versus South. It feels like an obvious distinction between some teams in a sort of Ryder Cup type style. You guys, Jerovians, have had a good season, right? So don't worry, I know rugby's quite niche and it's not going to turn into a rugby podcast. Don't worry, as much as I would love to do that for a living. But there's definitely some business lessons in the world of sport. So talk us through that, because you and your wife plays there as well, right? Is that correct?
Mrs. Sundin absolutely does, mate. Yeah. So multiple facets to what you just shared with the collective here, Tony. Let's go through them one by one, right?
And pick them. Yeah.
So if we're going to do North versus South and this charity, industry, accounting, and vendor versus each other kind of game, there's got to be a couple of rules to it, right? So if we're going to do North versus South, I imagine that's because you're the only person that would actually go against 110 kilogram with me confidently as a very seasoned rugby player yourself, mate. And for the record, I'm not playing against anyone I actually want as a client or currently work with, because I will not be held responsible for my actions on a rugby field. So just as a disclaimer, for anyone that's involved. So that's great. Outside of that, believe it or not, later on today, you're going to get CC'd in an email to a lovely person at Sage.
Okay.
Because I want to do some great things with great people in order to make this happen and generate lots of money for charitable causes and get to show Tony up on a rugby field. So that'd be great fun.
It's not hard, mate. I do that regularly myself, so I often don't need any help.
You're a friend and a good human. It would be the least I can do to hand your ass to you on a rugby field. But as to the final parts of that, I do play rugby. This is my first season back, though it has been prone with a couple of injuries along the way. My first season back in probably about 12 years off, because I got really, really badly injured. Rugby at Twickenham is a fantastic experience, or fabulous experience, Debbie. My goodness me. It sounds like Debbie wants to see us play against each other at some point, Tony. Debbie, let us know in the comments if you're up for that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so first season back after 12 years off, after a very, very near-death experience I had after playing some rugby internationally when I was much younger. But Mrs. Sundin, yeah, so she does play. She's genuinely, and I admit this openly, she's a better rugby player than I am. I'm slightly scared of the woman, even though I'm married to her. Very proud husband moments when she plays, typically on a Sunday, for the Jerovians lasses, as we call them up here in the north.
Beautiful. And you were promoted this season. That's correct, isn't it?
We were promoted, yeah. Backstory around the club and what's been documented, because we even got it put in the local paper.
Oh, mate, that is the win. That is. We get on the Hearts radio station occasionally with our crowd, because we've got good connections there. But yeah, mate, that's the win. That is.
Listen, phenomenal, mate. But after what has been a really difficult situation for the club this year has had a lot of new players come into play. Some really great, younger players coming through, rising up through the ranks. And actually what's happened, so as we know, majority or the best rugby coaches are little Welshmen, in my opinion. We've got a little Welshman. He's called Darren. He's my best little Welsh friend. Actually, he's not. Lucy Cohen's my best little Welsh friend. So sorry, Darren. I don't think he'll be watching because he's not on LinkedIn. But yeah, he's an absolute legend of a human. He's a legend of a human, but he's brought the lads together in the right way. And the team have gone from over a decade worth of defeat after defeat after defeat, like out of 185 games, I think they won 7 in previous years. So a horrific situation to come through this season, be top of the league, get promoted. I think from memory, it's like 13 wins out of 15, something like that. I think there was 1 loss, 1 draw, but the rest have been wins, and some of them very, very comfortably, including handing the asses to our rivals, another local club, by almost 100 points ahead. So, yeah, it's all mindset, mate. Mindset, bringing the right people together, holding them accountable. Like any area in life, it doesn't matter what's happened before, it's what you do now, doesn't it?
There's nothing better than, so our rugby club went through not quite that level of challenge, but for a number of years we went down a league, then we stuck in that league for a little while, and we went down another league, and then we went back up again. But there's nothing quite like the feeling of like the tide turning, like the grassroots sport. When I remember the season we got relegated the second time, there was about 9 or 10 of us who refused not to have a players' supper because we weren't going to have a players' supper. We've been relegated in a league that we should have been more competitive in. And there was about 9 or 10 of us that just got some pizzas in and had a few beers and like do any of the awards or anything, but we were just present in the club on the night of what would have been the players' supper. And then the season afterwards, we won the first silverware that we'd won in a while, and probably could have been promoted that year, but weren't quite there. And then the next year after that, we got promoted, albeit by the skin of our teeth, as COVID brought this season to a close, and they sort of worked out like an average points, and then we were just in second place, but were certainly worthy of it. And then we're still in that league now, which is good. But to keep a club going through that type of run of results is just incredibly difficult, right? It's so hard because people don't want to be involved in that. And I always say to people, it's like winning is everything at grassroots, right? If your club is winning, you get new players in, right? But sometimes it just happens, right? You get someone who comes into the club, brings a couple of mates down, you get off to a good start, and momentum's everything, right? So, mate, I'm delighted for you, because it is a nice reintroduction, right, mate? You've gone and chosen a club that probably, if you'd sat down and looked at the leagues, wouldn't have been the obvious jump out to you to jump back into, right? And a lot of other people would have gone, I'll go and pick one of those ones there that are in the top 3 or the top 4, and look like they're on the march. But it is it's good fun, right? And it's so hard to win promotions at grassroots, because you just got to be like, when the year we were second, the club that were first got to the semi-finals of the National Cup, which means that they're in the top 4 teams at our level in the whole country, and they could have competed probably 3 leagues above, right? They were brilliant. They beat us both times we played them, and we had some really good dust-ups with them. And unfortunately, they lost a load of those players, and they've now been relegated out the league that we were in the season before, and look like they're in free fall. So it comes and it goes, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that have been involved in grassroots sport, and it's great fun. It gives you a lot, but it can be a slog at times, right?
It is, mate. I think, when you say, like, a couple of things just to add, right? So the reason why I ended up playing at that club, ironically, I used to live in a house that was probably about 50 metres away from the club. I lived in a house for 2 years and never thought about playing rugby. I then moved to an area which was about 20, 25 minutes drive away from the club. And then it was actually Mrs. Sundin who she wants to go and play rugby. And then I went along to watch one of the games, and that little Welsh chap I mentioned earlier on, Darren, he looked up at me, casting a shadow over him, and went, "Do you want to play rugby? You're massive." And I was like, "Yeah, fair enough."
Me? Yeah,
and that's how I got back into it, mate. Yeah, I do. Yeah, and that's how I got back into it. But do you know what's really important? Like rugby, it depends on the circles that you're in, but for a lot of people, rugby or rugby players can have a bit of a bad rep, because of primarily lads, on night outs, acting like arseholes, if I'm honest with you. But actually, what rugby is to me is completely different from that. It's not just men, but actually the progression that women have had, particularly in rugby, very close to home for me, I being Mrs. Sundin. It's phenomenal to see how the women's team have got on, because they're top of their league as well. From a youth perspective, like there's over 100 kids that are trying out for the youth team as well. And I think what's really important, and the reason why I like it, is because rugby is not just the sport, the game, the camaraderie, the difficulties in overcoming those, but it's the whole community behind it as well. The people that support the players, the husbands, the wives, the kids, how people get involved and come together. And I think any sport where you've got a really good community element to it, but also a great level of fitness, and what that does for individuals' mental health is also a really good thing. So I'm I'm biased, right? But I'm a really, really big fan of rugby, and it's personally really helped me with, challenges that I've had to overcome, and a really good position that I'm now in physically and mentally in life. And that's what it does. It's not just the game or the knocking crap out of lads on a rugby field, even though sometimes that's quite fun as well, right? There's nothing wrong with having that slight Neanderthal, animalistic side of you coming out, as long as it's done in the right controlled way, where you're running with a ball and it seems to be a little bit more PC and appropriate.
It has definitely evolved as a sport. We'll move on from rugby soon because I know it's niche. But yeah, like for me, I am a fiercely competitive person, but I love competition. It's not like it is the winning, but it's also like the competition, right? I'd rather go and play a game and lose 39-40 in a game, be frustrated, than go and win 100-0, right? The competition, like there's nothing better than getting into any kind of sporting environment and just being able to test yourself, right? And I totally agree. Like my involvement with rugby has evolved hugely over the years, and it's evolved into a place where it gives me the kind of stuff you just described, right? Which is like being able to like kind of a crack with the lads. And that type of sort of like that classic profile of the rugby player is much fewer and further between than it used to be even 10, 15 years ago, right? It has evolved as a sport into something that is more palatable to the outside world and how rugby interacts with the non-rugby community. But yeah, like the mental health element of it for me is huge. Like it's that discipline of like, well, I need to be fit because I've got to play rugby, right? And when I don't have that, a couple of years off recently, I just feel kind of like lost in the wind of like, well, I might be fit, but probably I won't be because I haven't got that sort of like that motivating thing to need to be able to keep up with lads who are like quite literally 20 years younger than me, playing rugby, right? So yeah, it is. I love it. It will always be my blood as sport. I love sport generally, but like rugby is where I found my home. So I'm glad we've covered that. And we've touched on the mental health bit, which maybe we'll come back to because I think that's an important topic, right? And one that is, I know, close to your heart. But before we move on from that, tell us about R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T. Tell us about how it came about. Tell us about co-founders. Just go for it. Okay,
so tell us about R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T, how it came about, and co-founders for the three things that you've mentioned there. So tell us about R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T.
Take it whatever direction you want.
I mean, I like the fact that you've empowered me to do that, knowing full well that's exactly what I was going to do anyway. Right. But yeah, great stuff, mate. Quite simply, what do we do? So whether you're an accountancy practice, VFD, you're a SaaS vendor, you're a professional services business, there's a wide range of services that we can support them with. I think predominantly our markets are financial services, so accountancy. Typically what we get involved in is growth projects. So whether that be growth via acquisition or organic growth. If not, we typically get involved in projects to significantly increase profitability for UK-based and US-based accounting firms. So the done thing is, unless you've got an 80% profit margin on all compliance and advisory services, let's have a chat because we can do something pretty good. That something pretty good is dependent on the volume, the frequency, the type of work, lots of different variables to it. But for us, it's about combining technology, process automation, our own GDPR and SOC 2 compliant LLM, which we released after extensive trials over the last few months when we went into stage 3 on the 1st of April. But then actually I feel well qualified enough to say, after over a decade of multi-award winning experience in SaaS and professional services and financial services, software and AI can't do everything right now. So actually, who does that? And then combining globally right-sized team members from India, Romania, you put those three things together in various different ways, and that's how you get an 80+% profit margin on all your services. So yeah, it's cool stuff, man. But that's a little bit about business at a high level. CBA talking about it more. If you want to have a chat, find me on LinkedIn if you dare. But the reason why it came around, so I've spent over a decade working with accountants. It's probably the reason why I look early 40s, even though I'm only 33. But thank you for smiling, because I've gone one of two ways, and as you are, Tony Stevenson, a qualified accountant, and as you smiled, I feel like I'm off the hook there, so thanks. But yeah, like I kind of worked in these markets, various different roles for various different companies, you know, awards, multiple £1 million worth of growth, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I want better. Not for me. I kind of changed what success meant to me. And coming from Salford, coming from the council estate that I came from, Tony, I was like, you naturally want all the things that you don't have in life. So a lot of people are told, in order to be successful and happy, you need to have the car, you need to have the bank balance, you need to have the house, you need to have the holidays, you know, all that kind of stuff, material possessions, really. And I got all that stuff, but I was quite literally empty inside. I'd sacrificed majority of my 20s chasing money, as a lot of people do, regardless of the industry. And it kind of it's a really weird experience for me, but I went to Bali with obviously now Mrs. Sundin. Previously, she was Miss Sundin because I took her name when we got married, fun fact. But yeah, I went to Bali and we went to this temple, and I don't know what it was. I kind of smacked my head. Didn't knock myself unconscious or anything like that.
Low door? Was it a low door?
It was a 2,000-year-old fountain or series of. So I've probably done some damage to, you know, an outstanding significant monument in the back of my head, if I'm honest. But yeah, moving on, because that is yeah, I've just incriminated myself by saying that. But anyway, whatever. But yeah, I kind of went through this process and kind of knocked my head as I was coming up for one of these fountains, and a couple of changes happened in my life. I, after many years of struggles, became sober. I moved away from alcohol and drugs. I've got no shame in admitting I've had a varied, difficult background. And yeah, self-medicated an awful lot, but I'm now like getting on towards 650 days sober since I banged my head on that fountain. But I also, it sounds really strange, but I realized why I'm actually here on this earth, mate. And what I'm good at is building and growing businesses. That's my background. Got the right mindset to do so, but I wanted to be able to give back at scale. And that for me is to work with children and young adults around the globe. So that could be young men that I work with via a charity called Key for Life that was set up by Sir Bob Geldof, working with predominantly young men inside of prison systems, you know, kind of helping them out with ideas for business plans, helping them to see that life without, you know, a continuation of crime once they've served their time can be better. Or it could be the work that we're currently doing with, you know, a collection of schools across in India. So 950 kids across 3 different sites in India, and 26 kids that are full-time in an orphanage, various different things that we do. But yeah, it's basically 10% of our profits go towards funding that positive change. And it gives me purpose. It gives, it unites our customers, our employees, with a sense of purpose. And, you know, the 4 things that I put on a Post-it note were, you know, change yourself, change your mindset, change the industry, change the world. And yeah, so far so good, mate.
Have you still got that?
Co-founders, yeah, I do, yeah, absolutely. I've not laminated it because I don't want to change it. I think I spilled some coffee on it at some point, but fuck it, it's the real world we live in, isn't it? But yeah, the last thing, we've got 14 co-founders over 3 countries, and not all of those are listed on the website, and all of them need to be, because what they do is back office, which leaves me to evangelize and, you know, support customers' buying processes with my team currently in the UK, to save them to do what they need to do and stay in their lane, so we stay in ours as well, right? There you go. So, 3 points. I think they're covered.
There's tons of stuff that I'm going to threads I'm going to pull on from that, mate. But thank you. I think it gives people a good grounding. So, you talked about like reshaping your definition of like what success looked like.
Yes.
So I imagine that there may be people out there who consume your content or who have just listened to what you've just said and feel a similar sense of misdirection, emptiness, not being on the right path, like call it what you will. To assume that the bang on the head on the fountain was not the start of that process, and let's assume that that was just the final piece that like kind of made you conscious of it, right? What advice would you give to somebody who's maybe feeling that similar sense of like, oh, I chased this dream, this hasn't really kind of delivered me what I thought it was going to in terms of fulfillment, and looking to reshape their direction into something that was more fulfilling?
A lot of people have an end result, yeah. So that is a distinct period in time of which they need to accomplish something by. So certain people would refer to that as a bucket list, yeah. So we're hopefully all familiar with the term. Here's a series of things I want to do before the end of my life, is basically what that is, right? So people say, here's the thing I need to do. What I need to do is evaluate what makes me happy. I need to put certain steps in process to go and do that. But actually they don't understand the reason why that's going to make them happy in the first place. And more often than not, they think about something to achieve or accomplish, and an end date for that's actually been influenced. They think it's their idea, but it's actually been influenced by other people around them. So that could be their partner. That could be their partner. It could be living up to expectations that they think or they've enforced on themselves from their parents. Yeah, a lot of people want to appease their parents, and that's why they go and do what they do in life, because somebody else has done it before. The process of evaluation shouldn't have an end result. There's no end game. It should be a continuous thing that you do. So whether that is your relationship with your partner, whether that is with what you do in business, I need to grow. Yeah. So I'll give you an analogy here, more business related, Tony, but I need to grow, because if I'm not growing, I'm not successful. Why do you actually need to grow? Like, it sounds counterintuitive, but we provide services to accountants and SaaS vendors and professional services businesses to grow them commercially. And one of the first questions I ask is, why do you actually want to grow? In the immortal words of the notorious B.I.G., more money, more problems, right?
Yeah, just different set, right?
Yeah. So hold on, you've got a good quality of life. You get to see your kids. You get to go on nice holidays. You're not looking at the bank balance worrying, how am I going to pay your bills? Okay, great. So are you not happy and content with that? Right, okay, you are. So why the hell are we talking about £300,000 worth of growth in the next 6 months? Why are we talking about that? Why does that need to be done? Because if that why is not... Yeah, why is that why? Unless the why you actually need to accomplish that. For example, so if I grow by this, if I increase my profitability, if I do this, it means I get to exit in 2 years as opposed to 5 years. And then I've got enough money in my pension so I can then spend more time with my family. It's powerful. Great. I'll support you on that project. But otherwise, you want to grow for the sake of it. And what's the point? Like, actually define and redefine what success means to you. Don't look at what other people do, how quickly they've grown, what their exit was, what their practice was worth, whatever you're looking at. Like, do what's going to make you happy, because a realization that people don't always necessarily have at the front of the mind. And this is different depending on your religious beliefs and your perspective, which, this is purely my opinion here, but we get one life. There's a finite amount of time that we've got. Nobody knows what you've got. So I'll say it, and I've sworn a couple of times, but fuck it, I'm passionate about it, Tony. Live your life and be happy wherever you possibly can be. Don't take your eye off the ball where it comes to that. That's not an end game. It's not an end result. It's something that you need to do every single day of your life.
Do you know, so something I really struggle with is that feedback loop that you've just described there, and how that drags you out of the present. So like that sort of like, I must be growing, right? So like I think it's Carol Dweck in Mindset, famous quote of like, becoming is better than being, and like I totally buy into that, right? That feeling of like, I'm doing it, you know, like, Mum, Dad, come and watch me, you know, like I'm riding my bike, rather than like when they can just ride a bike, which is, well, you know, fine, I could just ride the bike now, right? But I get stuck in that feedback loop of it's like, I present two things, right? And it's if you're misaligned with like why I'm actually doing this, and you think you're doing it for a reason, and actually that's not right, one of two things happens, which is either you're not doing the thing that you want to be doing, and therefore you beat yourself up about it, which is the feedback loop that I get stuck in, which is like, I should be here and I'm here, and therefore I'm incapable of, my wife calls me on it all the time, of like reviewing the good stuff that I've done and the things that I've achieved and the places that I've been and the people that I've met and all that sort of stuff. And then you get stuck into that loop of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing what I should be doing more, bye, you know, and that drags you out of the present, so you're not able to then enjoy the things that you should be enjoying in the present, which is kind of where we should live most of the time, right? Or like you do achieve it, and then you get that feeling of like emptiness, which is actually like, you know, if it's not the right goal, but you've achieved it, then you're probably not going to get the satisfaction from it, right? So yeah, and also like enjoying the process, right? Enjoying trying to pick something that is something that you just enjoy turning up to do, rather than so like rugby for me, right? I really like the training for rugby bit. We got some comments. I just want to sling this one up there. Haven't read it yet. Dave, hi. Especially the growth doesn't come at a cost, which it does more than ever in the context of agility and culture. You lose in a world that's moving faster than ever and requires connection more than ever. I know you're huge on connection, Dave. Appreciate that. Okay, but I guess what is growth? It doesn't have to mean more money, more staff, more revenue. No, and I also like to ask that question, like, what is growth to you, right? Because it might be, growth might be, I want a smaller business with a higher margin, right? Which is kind of, not that I'm teeing James up for representy stuff, but that could be the case, and you should be quite clear on that, and quite clear on why that's important to you, not because Instagram said or LinkedIn said or you know, somebody else has influenced something that isn't actually in line with where you want your life to head. I'm conscious of the fact that we're wending towards time, and there's a couple of questions that I want to ask you, or a couple of topics that I want to get into. So one is, you have recently, and fairly recently, by in the last 18 months or so, gone from being an employee to a business owner, a founder, a chief evangelist, right? How have you found that transition? And like, what advice? So like, there's a lot of content out there. It's not very difficult to go and find content that says quit your job, become an entrepreneur, right? And that is for some people, but it's not for everyone. But like, it's a real strong narrative in, you know, in the world of podcasting and, you know, and kind of, you know, growth culture and that sort of stuff. So like, how have you found that transition? I know you'll be, you know, brutally honest, as you always are. And what advice would you give to somebody who was sort of like, I think that's for me, but I'm not wholly sure. Like, what's the downside of it?
Cool. So employee to business owner, I'd reframe it slightly. Intrapreneur to entrepreneur. Not like blowing smoke up my own arse and calling myself an entrepreneur, like whatever, somebody that owns a business or multiple businesses, which is what R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T group is by definition an entrepreneur, right? I think where I've gone from is working for other people's organizations, but in effect, treating that organization like it was my own business, with that increased level of care, of support, of sacrifice as to what I'm doing for that business. So I think from my experience, Tony, there's not been as much of a transition as other people might experience doing the typical, you know, I'll use the reference here, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, you know, kind of employee traditional timeline versus then going into everything. I think as a wider thing for starting your own business, and for context, we're a bootstrap startup that took the entirety of mine and Antonetta, who is my OG co-founder, the first. We both came together, set this business up, invested our entire life savings, at a point where, for me personally, I was paying for a wedding, which, holy shit, I wish I didn't, because most people, or some people that were there, I wish I didn't invite. Dave Selleck is one of those people that I did invite. And by the way, Dave, if you're still watching, I'm really glad you came. Miss you, mate. So just to be clear, love Dave. However, I did that whilst I was doing this charity walk, which I nearly died from. Fun fact.
Yes.
We started this business, and we were like expectations, like this image of business on social media and the fantasy land that some people have. Don't get me wrong. Can you start an e-commerce business up from your laptop, selling, key rings manufactured in China, assembled in India to people in wherever, and make 100K in like 6 months or whatever? Yeah, like cool. Some people do that. That's fine. But the vast majority of businesses, it's real pain, it's real struggle, and you will sacrifice more from your own mental health, well-being, and time with loved ones and family than you ever thought you would do. But by the time you get into it, it's too late to stop. For the first 6 months, me and Anto were doing 15, 16, 17-hour days, 6 if not 7 days a week when we started R.E.P.R.E.S.E.N.T. And actually, I'll be direct, Tony. Like, you've asked me to be direct and blunt about this. It nearly cost me my sobriety. It nearly cost me my marriage. It nearly cost me my sanity for how much I let it consume me. Wanting to do something to quite literally feed kids that otherwise would starve to death. Which is my why, when you boil it right down, right? So I know that might be difficult for some people to hear, but it's the brutal truth around it. But actually, when you do it, when you build it, when you make it happen, where you have this uncontainable self-belief that you don't give yourself a plan B, you will make it happen, and you will become a better person as a result of when you emerge from it. And it really, like, going from entrepreneur, employee to business owner, it gives me so much more of an appreciation for the clients that I work with, Tony.
I think
because I now know what that feels like myself directly.
I think that is some really sage advice. Taking that step from being somebody that just comes into work, works from 9 till 5, and goes home again, and that's as much as they care about the job that they do, to doing what you do, is probably a hugely jarring context shift, and being in a position where you have tried to kind of put yourself in that position of caring to kind of like test it out in an environment where you're able to see some of the rewards from it, but perhaps take that step is really useful. I'm sure people would find your content on that subject matter incredibly interesting and engaging, because there's tons of people out there that have considered that route, right? And it's not, if you want to break a ceiling, then sometimes you just have to be obsessed with something, right, to just drive that much energy through it so that it happens. And props to you, mate. Props to you. We're coming towards the end. So there's one last topic that I want to touch on, plus 500 more for future episodes, but like just for today, right? So I look forward to having 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll go for 10, right? We'll start with the 10 as the next goal for appearances.
Fast and Furious style. Yeah, we'll get Jason Momoa on as well. Why not?
That's it. Myself and Russell Frayne, who I'm sure will be on here in the not too distant future, have talked about the Fast and Furious franchise of presenting at DAS, because we've now done 3 in a row, 3 years in a row. So yeah, something like that for this, mate. Is just your use of social media, because I know that you are prolific, right? And you post most every day. And you post in a style that is very unique. And we sort of talked about this before we came on air. But I really like we talked about it briefly, and you kind of said like I sort of approach it almost as like a public journal. And actually, I'm not really too bothered about like what comes after I hit the post button, other than like I know that good stuff will come to me and the right people will find me out, because I could pick your post without your name on it, without any question, just from the way that you write and the style that you write in. How have you found social media and interacting with it, and what good has it brought you? What challenges has it brought you? Do you give it a second thought, or do you just hit post and then you're off and that's it, and that's the end of it? But we'll close on that. That's our final. And obviously, if you want to ask me anything before we duck off, but
cool. I wrote something along these lines, but a therapist once told me to keep a journal. And the idea behind that is I could take my thoughts and feelings, I could take them externally, which then allows for a reflection on it, right? So people talk about social media, the difficulty of posting, what to post, how do I post it, because they overcomplicate it in their head. What we need to do is humanize actually who we are and the perception that we have on social media, which is regardless of your business, regardless of global domination and the clients you work with and how many employees you've got and all the rest of that stuff, right? You're a human. We all feel, we all think. Like, I've approached incredibly taboo subjects to some people on LinkedIn, Tony. And, you know, people say, oh, it's not Facebook, right? You know, that blasé comment. But actually, my LinkedIn, what I post is mine. So I'm going to post whatever the hell I like. And actually, does it need an overly creative strategy? Yeah, you can have great strategy in order to develop and generate leads and business. Great, that's a good thing to do. But first, before you start looking at strategy, look at having a voice. Look at being comfortable in what you say, regardless of who's listening, who's watching. I've approached things about, you know, a man's perspective on miscarriage, my own personal experience, which I've had men come to me and say, I'm exactly the same. I felt like this, but nobody talks about it because it's taboo, because a man can't feel. A man can't show weakness. And that's a problem, because men, predominantly men, are those that unfortunately make the wrong decisions and end their time on this earth. That amazing thing that we've all got. And actually, those things need to be confronted. Those things need to be challenged. Like, I've done other things around, hey, you know, you don't need to employ a white guy to be successful in business, which was actually a comment that I gave to people that were interviewing me, like at a role previously. And you don't, right? You know, there's these taboos that exist, and I don't do it or confront them in order to annoy anyone or, create unnecessary traction and friction. I think we're all responsible for the world around us and what we create and what we change taboos over. And if there's something that needs to be talked about or considered, strangely enough, the opinion that you've got is probably shared by other people. And even if it's not, you can provide a contrasting opinion, regardless of who you are, right? And everyone should be free to do that without fear of what people are going to say and troll them. And you need to find that power within yourself. But do you know what it is? That can be a really powerful thing for business as well, Tony, right? If people can appreciate you and the fact you're real and not just this, tinted view of who you are and your life and your business and everything else, they can relate to that. If they can relate to that, they relate to you. Therefore, the more likely they are to be receptive as to what you've got to say. Like, for me, in the last 12 months, and I think I've shared this as well, I achieved the milestone of 1 million impressions that I saw you post about, which is, I wanted to get that. I remember you posted about it. I was like, shit, T, I've got it, mate. But actually, what's more important than the impressions is the circa £500,000 worth of revenue that has either been generated directly from content I've shared on LinkedIn or has been significantly influenced between when I first started that opportunity through to it being closed. £500,000 worth of revenue generated or influenced from what I've shared and posted about on LinkedIn. Yeah, I've done so without any fear. And that is what's possible if you can just be yourself,
And even more important than that, mate, is you and I we probably would, but we certainly wouldn't have known each other for as long if either of us didn't post on the internet about stuff, right? That's how we met. Which is awesome. So in FM tradition, we're going to close now because or maybe we can chat all day, and we will into the future. I'll look forward to having you on. Thank you very much for being such a supportive and caring guest and letting me present solo for the first time. Hope you all enjoyed it, folks, and we'll see you again soon.
Pleasure.